hear static? Charlie tapping lines again. Grossi still pressing buttons in Vienna. Talking shit from a desk.
Oh, Mr. Dana!
Charlie call in like he know that code. Voice cracked up, couldn't hold that load. Say Tokyo, but the heat ain't there. Talk real greasy from a folding chair. Say Dana line, say he got no facts, but we see melt and we know the tracks. Grossi feed scripts from a lockbox room. Just a big play with a clickbait boom. Boom, boom. He say just wait. Long jump soon. He gon' test fate. Tokyo Rose got a grandson troll. Call up Dana, try to play that role. Say operation, voice off stage. Stream stay live, he just sound caged. Scripts don't hit that bluff too clean. He don't debate, he repeat the screen. Say just you wait, but the call don't land. Whole thing run by Grossi's hand. Grossi push papers, slide that task. Charlie just read from a handler mask. He claim meltdown never took place, but the water still flash and the rod still trace. He say scam show, then his line cut quick. Trying to frame Dana like a Netflix flick, but the crowd stay locked. Cams don't shake, truth sit heavy and the call sound fake. Stream tab live, troll line trace. No name filed, burner in place. Long jump moving, playback fake. Call don't shake, feed don't break. Just noise on a burner, no seat at the table.
Oh, Mr. Dana!
Tokyo Rose got a grandson troll. Call up Dana, try to play that role. Say operation, voice off stage. Stream stay live, he just sound caged. Scripts don't hit that bluff too clean. He don't debate, he repeat the screen. Say just you wait, but the call don't land. Whole thing run by Grossi's hand.
About radiation.
You shut your pie hole.
He know a lot more than you.
Hold
You're
on.
stupid, man.
Piece of shit. Hey, what are you gonna be when you grow up?
Okay, sit. Oh, you don't make me sick.
Huh?
Mr. Thunderfoot, you're gonna be finished. You're gonna be finished.
Charlie call loud, voice all nerves. Long jump leak got prepped in curves. Just you
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Calm down, Charlie. Tokyo Rose. There we go. Up and running. Do you like my good show for everybody tonight? Do you like that? We're gonna get after it. Let's get started. You shut your pie hole. We got, you can call into these shows, by the way. It's 709-589-4406. Should TEPCO be guilty of something someday? Should TEPCO be guilty of something someday? It's probably my best poll yet, I think. TEPCO is guilty of nothing. The nuclear industry has never been found guilty of anything. This is a picture of the Canadian small modular reactors. It's a 24-story building, I know. That's what they are. So this is how they're going to move them. They have to knock down all the skyscrapers so they can move this one to their nuclear power site. It's hard to appreciate in this picture how big these things are. But this is a framing for a Kevlar sarcophagus for reactor 1 at Fukushima. It's 50 feet smaller than the Canadian small modular reactors. I know what you're saying, Dana. It's not a small. Well, the nuclear industry said it's small, so it's got to be small. What, do you think you're smarter than the nuclear industry? You want your own Tokyo Rose little son coming after you, too? So, and that song is a really important point because they've threatened me so many times to try to get me to stop doing what I'm doing. We're talking thousands of times now. They phone into the show and disrupt the show. It's meant as a threat, though. They've called me off when the show is not running and threaten me. Then they'll call me to remind me of the threats. I'm still here. It's unnerving, though, when you're being threatened so much all the time. But it's an important subject, and so we need to have a conversation about it, despite the fact that they don't want us to. Japan court rejects damage claims against utility executives This was a $90 billion U.S. settlement, so he lost. By stakeholders took him to court. It took 13 years to work its way through the court. Now they just shredded the lower courts, and that's how it always works, right? So if you're paying any attention to the news, you know this has been out there 300-400 times over the last couple of days. And so they want this firmly imprinted for some reason in everybody's mind. You got Mari Yamaguchi as the author, so that tells you all you need to know. You know this is a cover story, right? Japan court rejects damage claims against utility executives over Fukushima. And we'll get to the story here in a moment. I just want you to start to see some of the... It's all basically the exact same story, but it's hundreds and hundreds of media have ran out with it. Mari Yamaguchi, of course, again. A Japanese court has ruled that the former executives at the utility managing, these are not which is a really important facet because these are not decommission authorities. The tsunami wrecked the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant were not accountable for the meltdown crisis, do not need to pay damages to the company. So this was shareholders of TEPCO, stockholders, were suing the executives to recover the money they lost because of the nuclear meltdown. This is how ruthless this industry actually is. Japanese court rejects the damage claims against utility executives over Fukushima. So the problem was they said that there was no way that they could have known the tsunami was going to be bigger than the wall they built. The tsunami wall. But there's markers on the cliffs, 300 feet high. Do not build your homes below here because of tsunamis. It's a true story. And they have a 3,000-year history of the tsunamis. They're right on the tectonic plate, so how can you not have a tsunami, a massive tsunami? How could you not, right? But it's kangaroo court, so it doesn't really matter what we think. It only matters what they say. The Tokyo High Court, and they being the nuclear industry, they're completely incapable of acknowledging they had an issue. Ordering 4 former executives from TEPCO to pay $90 billion US, 13 trillion yen, to the company, saying they had failed to take the utmost safety precaution despite knowing the risk of a serious accident in a major tsunami, which is 100% true. Everybody on the planet knows that they're on a fault line. They have massive tsunamis that they can trace back 3,000 years, up to 300 feet high. Causing is it's 50 miles from a tectonic plate, which is the same thing as having lunch on the tectonic plate, right? Causing its 3 reactors. It was 4. It's an industry that it refuses to acknowledge any. So the first thing they'd done at 4 meltdowns and 8 fuel pools that melted down with a total of 36 reactor cores was disappear reactor 4. No, never happened. Yeah, but I downloaded a picture from TEPCO's website. Never happened though. Yeah, but I also got the same picture from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission site. No, well, it didn't happen. So officially that didn't happen. I know what you're saying. Dana is destroyed. Mom, Dana's pro-nuclear. He won't admit the building's destroyed. I feel you, man. I feel you. So it's a strange story, isn't it? Because here's all the media. They're claiming they're at the very top. So to be look above the fuel pool looking down, you got to be way above those 2 red fuel pools at the top of the building. Because it was on TV, then it must be true. That's the logic. Even though this was actually on TV too. Here's the media, who originally told you it looked like that, are now telling you that everything's perfect. None of them ever went to Fukushima on top of it. And keeping tens of thousands of residents from returning home due to radioactive contamination, which officially didn't happen though, as you'll see. I'll explain that coming up because I know it's confusing. And other safety concerns. Well, what other safety concerns could there be? You had 36 reactor cores melt down. Majority of them in 8 fuel pools at the top of 4 reactor buildings. That, despite the denial that reactor 4 melted down, reactor 4 melted down. No, didn't happen. Oh, okay. You're from the nuclear. Okay, yeah. Oh well, there you go. You can't argue with the nuclear industry because the media and universities will side with the corporation, with the nuclear corporation, not with the population or the planet or with any kind of reality, right? Lawyer criticized ruling is logically flawed, saying it means nobody can be held liable for safety negligence because tsunamis and earthquake predictions are still impossible today. But they're not in Japan because they're on a fault line with 1,000 serious earthquakes a year and a 3,000-year legacy of massive earthquakes and massive tsunamis. There's no way you can say you didn't know it was going to happen. But keep it in context that they said the building there didn't melt down. And who's they? All the media, all the universities. So how are you going to have a conversation with a society like this? A group of more than 40 TEPCO stockholders, filed a lawsuit in 2012 because the stocks crashed, right? Demanding 5 former executives pay the company $153 billion in damages. And the amount of 22 ruling against the 4th executive was the highest ever ordered in a lawsuit. Found 2 former TEPCO executives not guilty of negligence over Fukushima meltdown, saying a tsunami of the magnitude that hit the plant was unforeseeable. But how was it unforeseeable? In a place where the world's biggest tsunamis are already recorded throughout history. Saying a tsunami that magnitude that hit the plant, well, I guess they're right, this is the nuclear industry, so if they say they're right, then who are we to argue against an industry that has never been wrong? Has never been guilty of anything. It was the only criminal trial related to the nuclear accident on top of that, and the only criminal case related to the nuclear accident. Well, you can't have that. What? You found him guilty? Well, we'll just get the upper courts to overturn it. How can you find him guilty in the lower court but not guilty in the higher court? Well, the higher court is administration appointed. So the government, which is the pro-nuclear, appoints the pro-nuclear judges who are willing to look the other way. It's better that everybody should die of cancer and heart problems, liver problems, than the nuclear industry gets a black eye. I think that's a 2022 picture, is it? 2023. Don't believe them. Just because it says 2023, don't believe for a second that that's the real picture. The industry, even though the industry has never admitted to be wrong, I can assure you've been wrong. Japan's High Court overturns earlier ruling in Fukushima Daiichi. This headline, these stories showed up everywhere. And this is, we've seen these types of headlines recently start to show up. Japan, nuclear, Fukushima. There's zero context, right? Because there's so many words now that are censored. Japan, nuclear, Fukushima. And unless you're into nuclear, you're into Fukushima, there's no reason you're going to click on that story, right? Well, Jesus, honey, don't click on that story. There's nothing there. And same picture everywhere, by the way. Bless their hearts. They were protesting tritium, bless their hearts. 3 reactors. No, it was 4. I'm pretty sure it was 4. But who are you going to believe? You're going to believe Dana? You're going to believe me? Or are you going to believe all the media worldwide? Are you going to believe me? Or do you think I'm making... You must think I'm making that up, do you? Mom, Dana's making up pictures again. Get a little bit of good news today. Maybe I'll take you and show you that. Take you to my happy place, which is music. James Lucid has restored my faith in music. That's pretty cool on its own. It's 3 reactors to melt down and spread large amounts of radiation. Ooh, I'm telling TEPCO on you. You can't say shit like that. let's get to the bike. Let me tell that story today. So I broke down to St. John's. This was me a couple of days ago. Thursday? It was an 8-hour ordeal anyway. Finally got a ride out from the city with a stranger and picked up the bike, got it on the trailer, got back and actually done a show on Thursday night. It was one of those types. I found a problem. Get a load of this. She's a charmer. So so I lost all power in the dash, which typically means you blew a fuse, apparently. And that's where the fuse is, right there. And that's the pigtail. Let me give you a better picture. That's the pigtail. Look at this baby. I mean, the problem is that's the pigtail for your entire wiring harness for your bike. And they don't make the harnesses or the pigtail anymore. That was a bit of a headache. But look at this. That's my solenoid. And that's the other side. So this that plugs into this. Now, so the fuse should have just blown. It should never have melted apart. Right? The fuse should have blown. That's the point of having the fuse. Look at that. That's absurd. So on the one spectrum, you got everything melted and fused. It actually disintegrated the copper connectors inside of that. And so I had to cut it open. I tried to clean it up, obviously, but I ended up cutting. I went to the city yesterday and ordered new parts, like the solenoid, but I couldn't get the pigtail. So I went around to a bunch of motorcycle shops to see if they had any harnesses with a similar pigtail that I can plug in. And look at that. That's crazy. The damage it done was crazy. So I just soldered a new piece. I took the old one and chopped off a few pieces that was left on it. It didn't melt down. And oh yeah, so that's my compressor. I was trying to figure out that hose that doesn't. And I end up putting that clear hose into the plasma cutter. I'm not sure where I got. Oh yeah, that's right too, because I got a little video goes with that. Hang on. Let's play those 2 little videos. It's Sunday. It's today. And so that's crazy, eh? That's the old solenoid right there. This was the one that gave out, but it actually didn't give out. It melted down, that part, right? Both parts, the pigtail and that part. Okay, so I fuddled with it for a while. So that's hooked up. So theoretically, power should come on. Wow. If that's true, then I should be able to start it. Yeah, baby. Right on, eh? We got the bike back up. Got one of them back up. Because here it was today, and I was like, well, I got 2 bikes. My BMW's down. The black bike is down. My outboard motor is broken. 3 broken motors. The whole operation's falling apart. I said, I better try to fix something. Pouring rain. My plasma cutter was missing a hose. And this one. So I was watching a bunch of unboxing videos of plasma cutters. And the hose was basically a straw. And those blue things you see there, when you push in on it, there's like a crimp inside. So when you push in on it, the crimps retract. And all they were was like it was a green straw or something. A yellow straw, orange straw that just plugs in, but there's a crimp on the other side. So it's a low pressure system. So these hoses are too small. I just wrapped a little bit of tape around it and then put it in there till it filled up the gap and crimped it. Hopefully, till I get a replacement, that'll be fine. It's not the right size. It might have showed up, but I might not have understood why it was there. But it should have been. It should have been thrown in the box. Yeah, well, it wasn't. It wasn't. It should have been in the box. We have the other pieces already stored, and gotta buy an extension cord. Gotta buy, yeah, because those plasma cutters, you need you need 220 amps. Let's get back to the show. But anyway, we got I found some online for $110, 40-foot extensions for welders. I got a lot of cutting to do, eh? Let's come back to the... So that's good news. We got one bike up and running. I'm going to... tomorrow, just let me digress for a second. Tomorrow I'm going to put the trailer or the truck up on the... I have 4 of those drive-on ramps. So I'll put all 4 wheels up in the air. And I have a piece of plywood to put under the truck. I'm going to get in and change the oil. And I got to change the transfer case oil in both front and back. So I should be doing it all at one time, right? But I'm not. And change the oil, change the filter, rather. And something else I wanted to say tomorrow. What was I doing tomorrow? Oh, yeah, I was going to take the BMW and pull the gears apart and see if I can find out what's cracked off in there. And hopefully I can get that repaired. And if I can find what's going on with that, I'll contact BMW, I guess, and see if they got the part for the 650 Darka. Because we didn't get that fixed last year, right? And then I'm not sure what to do with the outboard engine, because that engine's been to Alaska 6 times. Like, it done long trips for months at a time, and that was powering the boat, all electronics and everything. And then was down here for a couple of years doing research in Atlantic, and so that motor, I'm not surprised it gave up, right? That was an amazing motor when you think about what it done for us. Almost 8 years of research with that thing. Ideally, you would put you're in the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, 46 million migratory birds are missing, and the foundations won't do nothing for anybody that's trying to do research. Let's get back after this story. Oh yeah, what was the train of thoughts? I mean, that's normal though for me, or I'll stop the show and I'll talk about what's going on. Because I have a big operation. And the only reason we got to St. John's yesterday is James Lewis had donated $350. And so I said, well, I got the money, let's go get the parts. That was my original incentive, right? Let's just do it. It's Saturday, they're open, I'm going in and order whatever parts I need to order, right? And I couldn't get all the parts, so today I took another route and tried to, I said, maybe I can rebuild that piece of that section, right? Because I got the tools. And that little plastic repair kit that I got, so you can repair plastic. You got the melter, you got the resins, you got all the other spots. And then soldering. My skills are still not that good, but it's good enough apparently. And so what I done was I epoxied everything too, so it couldn't tear apart, because when you're working with that kind of material, it's very iffy, right? So so it's pretty ugly looking, but it's not going to come apart. It's just as functional as it was before, but it's just, I gotta find another pigtail like that that'll plug in, and I'll find it. Main thing is it's up and running, because we were doing research when that broke down. I'd covered almost 50 kilometers of the coastline, never seen a single migratory bird, when there's supposed to be 46 million migratory birds here on the coastline of seabirds. Thanks to Fukushima, they're gone because the food chain is broken. I can't differentiate between the shows and the research, and because this is my life. Doing this stuff that's my life. That's all I do for 23 years or something now. And so for some people, they might not be able to appreciate why I conflated, but hopefully that helps you. I put 2 more lights. I picked up 2 more lights yesterday when I was in the city for the workshop. So now I have 3 overhead, very powerful lights, and so that brightens up everything. Because there's lots of areas there where you can't see very good. My sight's not getting any better. Anyway, let's keep going here because I got a tendency to. If you don't know the whole story, it might be confusing. I apologize for that. So anyway, that story showed up 200 or 300 times. I'm going to say 300, close to 300 times. And typically it had the same picture. The exact same paragraphs, the same author. Got to watch it because I got me super hot tea there to help cut the dust from my throat. And if you wave your hand and you touch it, it's right on the edge because I got no friggin' room in the studio left. All right. So should TEPCO, or the nuclear industry really, be guilty of something sometime? This was Martin Frackler, the New York Times at this point, Tokyo Bureau, I guess. And they were doing a nuclear forum in Japan. And his first question is, it's a nuclear accident. What do we do? Do we cover it up? Do we pretend it never happened? Which is horrifying when a journalist says stuff like that. But
my name is Martin Fackler. I'm the Tokyo Bureau Chief. And the title, as we just heard, was Challenges and...
He's the New York Times Tokyo Bureau Chief. Let me go backwards a bit. Let me do that again.
My name is Martin Fackler. I'm the Tokyo Bureau Chief. And the title, as we just heard, was Challenges and Opportunities After the Fukushima Nuclear Disaster. This crisis management. And the question of what do you tell your public? Do you tell them that there's a serious nuclear accident, or do you play it down? Do you try to cover it up?
Do you play it down? Do you try to cover it up? What's the difference, I wonder? Ultimately, it's all the difference. So a few examples of that is cover it up and play it down. This is the author. This is the South Korea professor at CAST, which is the Korean Nuclear Institute for Nuclear and Quantum Engineering. And he said about the releases, he said the 1.37 million tons of water stored in Fukushima plant included approximately 2.2 grams of tritium. So the only thing he's saying got out of the nuclear 36 reactors melting down is equal to 3 grams of sugar going into the ocean. The total emissions, the discharge. But this is a professor of nuclear and quantum engineering. Right, this is what Frackler was talking about, really. Who are the radiation experts? International, because they've never been guilty of anything. It's the same people, basically, on each of these. These are UN radiation experts. International Committee of Radiological Protection. UNSCLEAR, United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. ERPA, the IAEA, National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements. So these are self-appointed groups. These are not government agencies. These are self-appointed groups with the United Nations, and they set the policies for everybody countries, not the countries. Well, what did the military-industrial complex tell us we were allowed to do? That's what you're asking when you question their narratives. This is a short video of a bunch of professors and academics and scumbags talking about Fukushima and they have this is a forum for journalists, and the journalists are in the audience, and they're giving them the official cover story.
I'm going to ask Dr. Vetter to talk briefly.
This is Dr. Kyle Vetter coming up. Kyle Vetter was in charge of the kelp watch at Berkeley University in California University.
Here, you haven't had an opportunity. I know you're.
That's Kathleen Higley in the center. She's extremely popular in the nuclear industry, presentations, lectures, and she set policies for universities and hospitals and schools on radiation. She's a real-life monster on top of that.
An expert in dosimetry and measurements.
They're asking them what's to worry about North America or radioactive fallout in Japan.
So,
well, the reason I haven't had an opportunity to talk is because there are no problems in the medical field.
How did they all know the last? Do that again.
Had an opportunity to talk is because there are no problems in the medical field.
Do you see the face on Horsehead? I got it. How did they all? This is including the journalist right there. See buddy's bald head there. That includes. That's one of the journalists. They all knew to laugh on cue when they said there's nothing to worry about. We'll contest that coming up here. One more time for fun's sake.
Because there are no problems in the medical field.
Even he's laughing. Look, he's so proud of himself. That's Richard Vetter, PhD, CHP. He's with the Mayo Clinic. I'm sorry. The Mayo Clinic. You know, where you're sending your loved ones to get special radiation therapy that seems to kill every single one of them for some reason. The deeper they checked underneath Fukushima, now remember, nuclear industry has never been found guilty of a single thing. That's why they do the things they're doing. The higher contamination levels get now sampling over 40 feet below the surface. August the 1st, 2013. So that same month, this was Rupert Winfield Hayes' report at Fukushima. He's talking about 1,000 tanks, and TEPCO's going to say they have no control. That's 2013. Up to this point, they had no control whatsoever over water. Nothing. And that the 1,000 tanks they did allegedly build at the tank were filled up with water from under the reactor, an aquifer under the building. So I'll duck out. This is a really important video, by the way. Here we go.
Fukushima plant sits smack in the middle of an underground aquifer. Deep beneath the ground, the site is rapidly being overwhelmed by water. Beneath the surface, water flows downhill and into the basement of the damaged reactor buildings. There it is contaminated with high levels of radiation. To stop the groundwater flowing on into the nearby ocean, engineers are building an underground barrier. But that is causing the groundwater level to rapidly rise. It's now so high the water will soon reach the surface. Then it will start flowing overground into the sea. This week, the company that owns Fukushima, TEPCO, made this disturbing admission.
We understand that this water discharge is beyond our control, and we do not think the current situation is good.
Outside experts say it's now clear TEPCO is incapable of handling the cleanup at Fukushima. It's time for the Japanese government to step in. The situation is already beyond what TEPCO can handle, he says. If it were possible to take proper measures, they would have done it already. It's not as if TEPCO is refusing to do what they can. They're doing everything they can, but there are no perfect solutions. Even if the government does step in, it's not clear what it can do. The only other solution is to pump out the contaminated groundwater and put it in storage tanks. But after just 2 years, the site is already jammed with more than 1,000 giant tanks. Most of them are already full up. At least 400 tons of new water pours into the site every day, and it's going to continue for years and years. Fukushima's water crisis has only just begun. Rupert Wingfield Hayes, BBC News in Tokyo.
Now check, make sure my microphone is on. I got a tendency lately. I turn my microphone back on. Get the stupid headphones off my. I love my headphones, by the way, but just don't like listening to myself. Not when I'm talking, because there's like an echo. Just let me go backwards for a second. So you got TEPCO. You got TEPCO saying in late 2013 they have no control over the water whatsoever, but everything is in tanks, Dana. Right? I showed you that earlier. They talk about 1,000 large tanks after they show you hundreds and hundreds of small tanks. By the way, none of this is going in tanks because the tanks are all connected for some idiotic reason. And if you have an earthquake, tanks separate, you can never get back on the site. So why would you put this stuff in tanks when you absolutely quite positively would have those particular attributes, right? Not only that, you're pouring water over a nuclear meltdowns, and so the water is going to be full of fuel particles that settles on the bottom. Now, these are not large tanks. So if you exclude these tanks, you're only talking about 450 tanks or so on the entire site of large tanks. So that story about water and 1 million plus tons, none of that makes sense. But there's the same Rupert Winfield Hayes is up in the top right-hand corner. He's going to tell you now he's on top of Reactor 4. Hang on.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
So that's the same guy who told you that everything under the building was just enough to fill up the 1,000 tanks, etc. That's the other media trying to convince you they're on top of a building that doesn't even exist to your left. So they're not going to show you. I made this in 2013, by the way, when this story showed up. I'm like, I got him now, man. I got him right where I want him now. And it's 2025, and I'm still. I got him now. Hidden NOAA animation shows ocean all along the United States west coast contaminated with cesium. Because apparently, according to the nuclear industry, that's the only thing comes out of the reactor. But this got leaked, and then it was confirmed to be true. Got leaked online. They hid it away. Now, the reactors actually blew up. And what happens, unlike gas, oil, and coal emissions, which is carbon, so you got more trees and plants and insects and puppies and everything. When nuclear, it attacks everything with replicating cells. And gas, oil, and coal emissions only travel a short distance. And so that's why you have lots of forests and meadows and everything around nuclear power plants within a couple of 100 miles of them, because you've got all this beautiful carbon in the environment. Nuclear releases plumes that covers the entire planet. That's the only emission on the entire planet that makes a plume that covers the whole planet. This model is based on 20 days to your top left. That was Reactor 1 explosion, for instance, would be destroyed. Some have created plutonium, uranium, it wasn't supposed to be there, compound. At the time of nuclear testing, the plutonium, uranium would be destroyed in the presence of air. This was when another academic study meant to misrepresent what happens, suggesting that plutonium, uranium, when it's exposed to air, gets destroyed. It's probably the craziest thing. I think that is the craziest thing I've ever seen. The nuclear industry's never done anything wrong, so I should shut up, because slandering, defamation of the nuclear industry's character is all I'm guilty of, because the industry's never been found guilty of anything. Should it someday be found guilty of something? Does that sound stupid? So, what's the power bill for this site every day, I wonder? This is what they call carbon-free for some reason. And without carbon, of course, no birds or insects or puppies or friends or families or any species. We look just like the moon. But can you see how big each piece of this entire site. It's the biggest construction site on the human planet, but it's carbon free, Dana. Which is crazy. They've been doing this for a long time, trying to, because nuclear kills everything with carbon. It attacks everything that's carbon based, and destroys everything with replicating cells. Carbon makes replicating cells. Nuclear destroys it. And so why is almost every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms worldwide? This is the weapons production site surrounded by farms. This is a satellite picture. This is the craziest thing imaginable that you would do that, because the fuel pools on their own are hemorrhaging. Are still splitting atoms. They would for 1 million homes and businesses. Are now released directly into the environment. They have no containment. So, such a heartbreaking story as you start to appreciate the great harm that the radioactive fallout does, and you can't contain it. Every nuclear power plant, I've coined it personally a disease factory, because there's so many illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses. That's the only appropriate name that I can come up with. Every organism in Fukushima Prefecture is contaminated with radiation. 1.4 million atoms a kilogram in worms' feces, 60 kilometers from the nuclear meltdowns. Well, you're probably going to get the same thing in North America, as you'll see coming up. The food was banned by 55 countries for a decade, but nothing got out. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout in 3% of the land of Japan only, but nothing got out. And for some reason, the human population is so hypnotized by the idiot box, the TV, that they're not able to rationalize the differences. Oh, there's 30 million bags, wow. Wow, I gotta turn on the news, see what else is out there. That stuff is just too much for me. People are in a daze, eh? But these shows are basically a necessity for humanity. Assessment of individual external. So this study came out recently. We've done an entire presentation on it. And so the criteria for moving people back into the nuclear wasteland is the assessments of individual external exposures. External. I was quite shocked. It was just, I can't remember how many times, but it was external exposures was mentioned so many times, when the reality of it is internal. External is really bad, don't get me wrong, but why wouldn't you do a study also on internal? What's the point of having universities and academics and grants? Why bother with academic journals if they're only going to print the opposite of what they should? Comparisons in X-rays and CAT scans are meaningless. So when you hear people talk about is equal to this many X-rays or this CAT scans, these are crazy people. Inhaling particles increases radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. By a factor of 1 trillion. It's in your body's pulsing energy, wrecking your chromosomes, your DNA, your cells, or if you're a bird or an animal or whatever, mammal or a human or a kid. It's catastrophic. This is catastrophic stuff. It's considered 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. But the International Atomic Energy Agency is going to tell you it's like a banana and potato chip and walking in the sunshine. The experts are going to tell you it's like climbing a mountain and flying on an airplane. And that's what they've been doing for 80 years. Every alumni is out there doing the same thing their entire career, and they're always producing more academic students, and they're out there telling the same lie. And in order to get along, you got to go along with these types of you got to enforce the propaganda. If you want a job in administration, you got to get out there and publicly claim that it's like flying on an airplane or climbing a mountain. Hallelujah. And so the studies to quantify moving people, children and women and back into the nuclear wasteland, it was based on external, and they're based on natural radiation, not even man-made. Right? All of this, and this is the ICRP, International Committee of Radiation Protection, which is the United Nations, the Nuclear Regulation Authority of Japan, many other different institutions and companies all came out and done the same studies quantifying that the individual external exposures, none of them were on man-made radiation and none of them are on internal. And this was a recent study. These are all the other studies that they quoted for. But just because they lied don't mean the truth doesn't have an effect. So 13,646 children out of 38,200. We used to be 1 in a million children would have thyroid tumors. And the government decided that they are benign, but they're not, because the tumor is on the thyroid for starters, and it's a tumor. And it's a 2-centimeter tumor, so it's actually a physical tumor. If you put it in your hand, it's physically noticeable. It's not like it's a microscopic or something. And because it's on the thyroid, it means they're producing radioactive hormones. And this is children, so their developing life cycle is quite long. And so this is catastrophic to their growth, to their body functions. Their thyroid dictates through the hormones, which are now radioactive. And it used to be 1 in a million, so it's 358,000 out of a million in that study. That's the next year. That's the very next year. But nothing got out. Nothing got out. Comparing it, inhaling particles increases the exposure, each particle by a factor of 1 trillion. So Canada, United States, and the rest of the world got covered immediately in radioactive fallout. There's many academic studies quantifying that. And there's different isotopes. So just let me take you through a little tiny bit. This one was Xenon-133, which is what this plume model after 20 days. Again, when you see a carbon fallout model, it doesn't look like this. Nuclear radiation is the only plume that covers the entire planet. And an atom really matters, right? And a particle. So rain with 20 million particles, this was on the west coast, Canada, this is a Canadian study. With 20 million particles are the doses of 1 trillion or more when they're on the interior of your body type. Very powerful stuff. And that's 20,000 pulses of energy every second. Per liter. And so if you know anything about how rain works, it soaks into the ground, deep into the ground. Well, back then anyway. And what that means is the rainfall that was coming in, because we did have a healthy ecosystem before this showed up. Not 100% healthy because of the legacy of the industry, but it was still functional biota. And so this stuff got sucked right down into all the biota, which meant all the other isotopes were in the same plume, the same radioactive fallout, the same rainfall. It's not just rain that causes it to fall out, but this was backed up with an appropriate study of 220 million atoms per liter of iodine-129. That doesn't go away for 15 million years. Now, it doesn't pulse energy very far, but because it's man-made, its energy is consistent for 150 million years. And it's harmful to everything with replicating cells. And because we used to live on a planet that was a soup of life, where it was just an unimaginable amount of creatures in a drop of water, this is easily capable of destroying the integrity of that extraordinary important asset to this planet. And so for the ratio of iodine-129 it's not pretty well known. It's for every iodine-131 there's going to be 10 times more iodine-132. So put another zero on that. It's 200 million atoms of iodine-132. It should have been 30 ratio of iodine-133. And then a 31 ratio of iodine-129, which was a separate study from a different institution. This is a Canadian study out of Ottawa too, by the way. But what that means is it's not just iodine. When you see iodine-131, you got to factor in ratios, and you can do the same thing for other isotopes. The Japan government did not reveal plutonium-241 detection. Radiation doses were 50 times higher than the total of the other 3 plutonium isotopes, which would have been 238, 239, 240, that were mentioned. And so that's 4 isotopes in that, but just 241, which was 50 times higher. And now, there was another model, another independent study based on TEPCO's numbers, which are completely dishonest, and dishonest by trillions, factors of a trillion. This was a plutonium-239 dispersion based on the numbers, the real numbers of the buildings, each building. You're looking at around 54,000 pounds of plutonium, 238, 239, 240, 241 released into the environment, which is named after the devil. And if you look at the animal studies, and Dr. Raymond Gilmedi from Loveless Respiratory Research Institute in New Mexico, which is the Navy military, the Navy, United States Navy Research Institute, and they don't kill, officially as of about 3 weeks ago, they had to release all the beagle dogs and beagle puppies. This study, they killed 144 beagle dogs and puppies, and they let them live out their lifespan. Death from radiation occurred about 1.5 to 5.4 years after the 144 dogs were, because beagle dogs are not going to bite you. They're very easy to get along with. They're very easy to grab onto. So it's perfect for these sickos to destroy these animals. Tumors of the lungs, the skeleton, and the liver occurred beginning about 3 years after the original exposures. And bone tumors, 93 dogs were the most common cause of death. Out of 144 dogs, bone tumors killed 93 dogs. That's crazy numbers, right? Liver tumors in 20 dogs killed them, and lung tumors in the rest of the dogs. But they were competing. A lot of the animals had 3 tumors, the skeleton, the lung. And skeleton means radioactive stem cells. So it's a terrible thing. But on top of that, it was discovered that the human kidneys are 50 times less efficient than the animal kidneys that remove the plutonium. So animals were 50 times better, not 50% better, but 50 times better. So imagine somebody's can run faster than you, 50 times faster than you can. Well, animals' kidneys are 50 times more efficient at removing plutonium than the humans, which means humans are 50 times more likely to die if exposed to plutonium than the dogs. And every one of the dogs died, and they all died a brutal. The majority of them died an absolute brutal death, because that's what a skeleton tumors are. They're brutal. It's a brutal way to get killed. But most concerning was that the fuel. Now forget about the alpha emitting. Just think about the biggest byproduct is not cesium or iodine. Curium isotopes are the major byproduct. This is what we call a nuclear meltdown, a curium core, because they're producing sadistically catastrophic amounts of curium, which you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for the plutonium that killed all the dogs. So curium isotopes are the major byproducts in a radiated nuclear reactor fuel and comprise a significant fraction of the alpha. So don't worry about the fact that it's alpha. Worry about the fact that it's the significant byproduct. So when you hear cesium, you hear any other isotope, and mostly you hear cesium and iodine typically, unless you come here. So remember, inhaling particles increases radiation exposure by a factor of 1 trillion. So nothing got out though, officially. Despite the undeniable amount of evidence I showed you, nothing did get out. That's the official story. There was 865,000 cancers. They stopped releasing any numbers after this one went viral in 2012, a year after Fukushima. So not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. It's not just cancer, right? So you got all these children, 356,000 of a million with thyroid tumors on their, which means, they also going to have radioactive stem cells. You can't just have radioactive thyroid, producing radioactive hormones. You're also producing radioactive stem cells. Government expert, astounding levels of radiation measured in the United States, 500,000 times pre-Fukushima levels. We have never ever seen anything even close to it. And concentrations kept going up every day. This stuff doesn't turn to fairy dust, okay? It's still there. And your Geiger counters can't read. Where's mine? There it is. Sorry about that. We've never ever seen anything close to it. We've never seen anything like Fukushima. Radioactive fallout, for instance. It was catastrophic. 5,500, 7,500 miles away was catastrophic numbers. But officially nothing got out. Amazing to see 7,000 kilometers away, a matter of life and death. And people don't appreciate the significance of the difference. Ignition switch relay power dash on test to relay terminal 8586. Disconnect the battery to reset. That's a great idea. I forgot about that actually. So just let me go back to that story for 1 second. I was showing pictures earlier. And so what the solenoid still works. I took the old solenoid, cannibalized parts, and put it on the one that melted apart. But it wasn't the structure wasn't damaged, just the pigtail connections and everything. And because I knew this, because when I went to take it apart, I you know how tight it is in there. I touched it with the wrench and it bumped, and so I started jacking the engine over, and I was like, oh, maybe there is hope. And so I was just curious why. Because when I changed the solenoid 2 years ago, everything was perfect there. I never had no issue. But I did buy a cheap solenoid off the Amazon. I ordered an expensive one at the dealership yesterday. Proper one. That'll show up. It's on back order. So 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But the other one's working now because I cannibalized the parts and cleaned up the other part and rebuilt it. But I wonder what caused the meltdown. What could cause that? All I had done, I had put a new battery in it, and that battery's still fine, by the way. And I had put a solenoid switch on it. That's all I had done because it wasn't turning over on every push, right? You had to push the button 7 or 8, 9 times before it would. So all I done was just ordered in a new solenoid and replaced it, which is quite the pain in the arse on those things. And so now I got to check it regularly to see if it's starting to melt down. Did it melt down in just one go? Did that happen over a period of time? I'm assuming that I didn't find any debris there, so I'm assuming it happened and the debris blew out of there with the wind from the bike on the road, maybe? I don't know if anybody got an opinion on that some kind of insight. But I'll definitely, you're right, I'll disconnect the battery and let it discharge. I'll leave it out there for half an hour or something. Then I'll disconnect both sides and then let it recharge. That's a good idea. Let's keep rolling here. Let me just recap. So you got all these incredible health issues, but nothing got out. So what are you going to blame it on? You had absurd amounts in North America. And then Grossies out there saying that the same radioactive fallout that is the reason behind the so-called climate change It's not climate change, it's a biota extermination. It's an extinction event from radioactive fallout, not from climate change. The climate change is real because you killed a biota so the earth doesn't soak up water anymore. I just put this section in there because I just wanted to people appreciate some legacy headlines. Canadian levels on the United States West Coast. This was the French government experts. This is the French Ministry of Defense of the Environment and Industrial Research Institute, IRSN, French government. Radiation spiked. This is not an opinion or a conjecture. This is the documentation. So this is a study of 1 million to 10 million times the cesium-137. Cesium-137 pulses energy 600 feet every second. So you have, and this was the plume model that they released. Like this one, let me go back to this one is based upon 8 days, but this is the plume model based on 16 days. I think this one. They have two, one 16 days and one 31 days. So they're both the same, right? But except the 31 days just gives you the longer projection or longer documentation. So in 16 days, we covered the entire planet with 1 million to 10 million times pre-Fukushima levels per cubic meter of air of cesium-137, which is catastrophic to every, like, it's impossible to be anywhere on the planet and not being constantly attacked with the pulses of energy from this. But I showed you all kinds of documentation of different isotopes, right? So this was the Norwegian Institute for Air Research of cesium and iodine-131, cesium-137, iodine-131. And so it's really interesting because you got all the media universities claiming that the buildings look like that, but you got the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and TEPCO's website and everybody else originally released Reactor 4 pictures. It was in all the media, it was everywhere. So now the official story as of August 24, 2023 is nothing got out. And that was cooked up by the International Atomic Energy Agency, and all the media came out, and there was a big campaign for many, many months leading up to August 24, 2023, which was the date they were originally allegedly the first time they had any releases from Fukushima. So when you look at the picture to your left, which is the original picture in 2012, does it look like maybe something got out of the building? Because officially it didn't. And so how are we supposed to have a future on the planet when we have this criminal network known as the nuclear industry? Radioactive material from the reactors is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. Does that make you feel better? Of course, it's like a banana. It's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, Dana. It's like flying on an airplane, but it's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. It's like climbing a mountain, but it's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. These are not questions that is going to get asked to the people who tell you it's like walking in sunshine. There's no one there going to say, actually, it's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison, because if you're on TV and that happens, that's the end of the nuclear industry, right? Its entire legacy is predicated upon you never appreciating or understanding the reality of this industry. Extreme increase in mortality caused by cardiac diseases, so it's not just cancer. Death rates might give the creeps to some people. So the death rates, that's a frightening statement on its own. In just 1 month compared to any other year, that month before, had spiked. That was the same year there was 865,000 extra cancers. There was an extra 12,700 people died of heart attacks. Cancer starts screeching up. This is 2012. Children with 11 atoms a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. Remember that study of 1 million to 10 million times per cubic meter of air? Guess what happens to all the birds, mammals, and animals? Guess how vulnerable they actually are? And in males in Japan, it was something like 4 out of 10 children were born males with 1 testicle. There was congenital heart disease operations, which is open heart surgery. rose 14.2%. This is a study. So good. There was a 14.2% increase in the number of operations, which were open heart surgery, per 100,000 live births for complex congenital heart disease in neonates and infants. Complex congenital heart disease, which of course went nuts in North America right after too, right? So for every 100,000 children, 14,200 need open heart surgery. I told that to the last doctor I seen. Just his eyes came out on his cheeks. He was like, holy shit. Holy shit. He didn't say the word shit, mind you, but I could read his face. He was going to. Irreversible heart damage for children with 50 atoms a kilogram. But we had a plume cover the entire planet, acknowledged by the French government in a study, spike of cesium-137 covers the entire planet in less than 16 days at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And oh, by the way, there's irreversible heart damage for children with just 50 atoms a kilogram. How are you going to avoid that? How is a child going to avoid that number when you had what happened? Because you can't. Doomsday-like radiation release if fire in the pool at Unit 4 would be a global catastrophe. Well, Reactor 4 is to your left. Does it look like they had a fire? I can't tell. I think I'm just stupid. It looks pretty good to me. I trust a journalist, not Dana. Dana's a lawyer. He's just trying to fearmonger you. So, this was the cover story. It's no exaggeration to say the fate of Japan and the whole world. So if the fate in Japan and the whole world is dependent on number 4, what about Reactor 1 and Reactor 3 that detonated and ejected their reactor cores into fuel pools, which was 8 reactor cores each, right into the buildings? Because once the zirconium goes through a chain reaction, now it's pyrophoric. Like once it's exposed to oxygen, like in this case here, where the fuel pools reactor cores are falling back down, they're burning. This was another study of another isotope, and this was the super hot particles. It tends to concentrate in the testicles of males in California, but you can't just have it in California. All the plumes are the same plume. These are different studies identifying different isotopes in the plume in different parts of the country and the continent. So 360 atoms of radioactive sulfur, peroxide, hydrogen, buckyballs per day may have been inhaled by the Californians in every species in that case, right? So if it goes to the testicles for the males, where does it go for the females? And there was another independent study of 1,500 atoms of the sulfur, peroxide, hydrogen, buckyballs. There is sulfur created in a nuclear meltdown, but they sprayed salt water on the reactors for months. In the California, this was an airborne plume. The airborne plumes, which had all, like I showed you all these, I showed you plutonium, showed you cesium, showed you iodine-131, explained that whole process, 132, 133, which, by the way, are 9 times more effective at ionizing and radiating the thyroid glands than the incredibly effective and brutal 131 is. And with 220 million atoms of iodine-129 and other studies. So I showed you all these different studies. Xenon-133 in Washington was 450,000 times above detection levels. Persisted for weeks. There was a continuous plume covering the entire planet that's still going on today. The reactors are still melting down, still releasing huge amounts, but wasn't burnt off in the first 5-6 days. Some of it went China syndrome, we believe, from reactor 1 and 2, mostly from reactor 2. Reactor 3 and 4 ejected their inventories, which were 9 reactor cores per building. 8 of the reactor cores were in no containment and sitting at the top of the buildings which don't exist anymore. But this story is important. It is never going to stop being important. And when you factor this into any abnormalities, supercell typhoons, supercell cyclones, supercell hurricanes, you start appreciating how this plays a huge part in the health issues, the health consequences. This is symmetrical worldwide. Bear with me. What have I got here? I can't remember. Just bear with me a second. I was looking for the explosions of reactor 1. Yeah, that's reactor 3 exploding. You see big chunks falling back down. That's the reactor core and the fuel pools. That's 8 reactor cores plus the running reactor, 9 reactor cores falling back down to the earth. And this should be reactor 1. Yeah, this is reactor 1 exploding. The fuel pools. This was a pulse event. And you can see, you can kind of see that. Let me do that again. You'll see that shock wave originally. Watch. Here we go. Yeah, that's a shock wave, see? Which means it's extraordinary. Okay. Hallelujah. Still got that nuclear exceptionalism. Right on through. I really love that song, eh? There's so many of those songs, man. It's just amazing when people get a passion and they just keep putting into it, boy and boy, there's no stopping them, right? And because they're good things, right? It's an honorable thing to do, is to come out and beat on this disgusting nuclear industries. It's probably one of the most worthy causes a human can commit to. I screwed that up, did I? Let's try this again. Here we go. Okay, so that's the fuel pool. And above the fuel pool, this is what it looks like. Now, what you're looking at up there is vents. You can see the vent, little square, and you'll see it in different places. This was put in 20 years after the buildings were built to help vent the hydrogen. So there's nothing at the top of the building, the very top of the building. It's just metal, and I guess there's some insulation up there, right? So then the question is, what made the massive initial plume? Is the fuel, when it's exposed to oxygen, because they're in fuel pools, once it's not exposed, it immediately catches fire because it's already gone through a chain reaction. So once it goes through a chain reaction, it has a totally different property than what it had before. The original fuel rods that are not gone through a chain reaction have a special coating, right? They have a zirconium cladding, but they have a special coating to protect it from the oxygen before it goes into the reactor. Once it goes through the chain reaction, that coating is no longer working. Recycling 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout is a crazy story. Instead of storing it for 1 million years, they're just going to put it wherever complacent people are. Now, they disappeared 16 million one-ton bags. So 16 million one-ton pickup trucks. The average truck you see on the road is a half-ton pickup. When you see a bit bigger, that's a 3/4, but a big pickup is typically a 1-ton pickup. And Japan has 16 million one-ton pickups, trucks, of radioactive fallout missing. That's the best way to look at it. So where could you hide 16 million one-ton pickups? Trucks. right? Because you can't. So what did they do with it? There's 16 million bags missing that, and we cover this 5 days a week. We are relentless because that's appropriate. That's the appropriate response to the nuclear industry is to push back against it. Yeah, there's zirconium cladding around the pellets too, because you got uranium, plutonium pellets, so you got to separate them, right? Everything is tritiated now. All water on the planet is tritiated water because of the radioactive neutron fallout worldwide. Like, let me see. Let's keep going here for a little bit. It's not going to be an exceptionally long show tonight. To reduce radiation across Japan / Fukushima, they have scraped a layer of contaminated soil from swaths of land. Allegedly, it was originally 2.5 centimeters. Now they say it's 5 centimeters because I made fun of them for years. Because try scraping up 1 inch of topsoil and tell me how impossible and stupid and retarded that actually is. Next time you're in your garden or somebody's garden, pick up a shovel where there's some dirt and try to scrape up the top 1 inch. You can't. Right? You do a better job if you had a broom and a dustpan than you will with a shovel, right? So it's absurd to suggest that they scraped up the top 2.5 centimeters, which is 1 inch of topsoil. Just like how do you scrape up one? So they moved that goalpost to 5 centimeters now. Well, it's well documented for years and years and years. That was the official story. And they spent $28 billion picking up 2.5 centimeters of topsoil. So this industry is full of nothing but idiots and morons and scumbags. It really is. I don't say that to be belligerent. I'm not saying that to disrespect the industry. I'm saying it because it's true. It is what it is, right? If you ask anybody who works in the industry, do they feel safe at the end of their day when they're going to their car? They're going to say no, because they work with a bunch of nut jobs, right? So they never feel safe. That's the reality of this industry. None of them trust anybody else because it's a cutthroat industry. The whole industry is full of the worst humans imaginable. It's really something that there's no account, because it's not illegal to poison you, see, with radiation. Congress and parliaments don't have the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radioactive fallout. Now, as young farmers seek to bring, or any kind of radiation hospitals, it's not illegal to kill you in a hospital. It's illegal to kill you with poison, but it's not illegal to kill you with radiation. Try wrap your mind around that statement. Dare you. Double dare you, actually. It's not illegal to kill you with radiation, but it's illegal to kill you with poison in the hospital. Yeah? That's a fact. And it's like Congress and parliaments and governments around the world do not have the authority to make it illegal to kill you with radiation. Only the Regulatory Commission has that authority. Each Regulatory Commission is appointed by the current administration in each country. And so even if a current administration in a certain country makes it illegal to kill you with radiation, that's not applicable anywhere else on the planet. And the next administration will turn that clock back the minute they walk in and sit down with the next administration, right? In fact, say there was a Nuclear Regulatory Commission in Canada, United States, went rogue and said, well, it's illegal now to kill you with radiation. They're fired. And the people that are going to replace him in 6 or 7 days, that are going to be appointed by the president or the prime minister of the country, is going to reverse and rescind that order. So, therefore, this is an industry that shouldn't exist, just on that premises on its own. Now, as young farmers seek to bring life back to the region, it's not young farmers, it's a single guy growing a single type of fruit. And all the media has ran crazy. In fact, James even put out a song about it last week, right? Bless his heart. Once known for its delicious fruit, this is what they say about the fruit coming out. They never stopped growing food in the nuclear wasteland, by the way. I showed you earlier where 14 prefectures were banned by 55 countries for over a decade. They didn't stop growing food there just because it was banned by 55 countries. They just shipped it to countries where it wasn't banned. Canada removed all restrictions after 93 days. Canada jumped on the bandwagon, Stephen Harper, and when everybody was satisfied that he'd done the right thing, then without coming out and announcing it, they removed all the restrictions. 93 days. And so the most radioactive food, which at that time couldn't really be shipped anywhere, only Canada. And now obesity rates in Canada are 80 to 90%. Which is typical marker of radioactive brain damage from radiation poisoning, by the way, which rates doubled in Japan in the first year. Once known for its delicious fruit, and that's what they would say, well, it's so delicious. Yeah, but it's radioactive, stupid. When that's in your body destroys your health and your children, your friends, and your family, why would you do that? Well, it's 10 cents a kilogram cheaper, Dana, than other rice. Oh, okay, stupid. My brother's wife would drive 6 miles to save 3 pennies on a liter of pop. My gas was pretty cheap back then, but it still didn't make any sense. Topsoil was collected as part of a large-scale decontamination effort. Like every tree, every building, every sidewalk, every car, every playground, every school, every hospital, every structure is completely, permanently contaminated. And the contamination comes out a lot of times with heavy radioactive rain, rather. And so now it's going to simulate and splash in up underneath everything too, and deep into the ground. It's going to penetrate very deeply into the biota and then into just the estuaries and everything else, where the foundation of humanity exists, and destroy that in increments over a few decades, and we're well underway. Now, let me go back to the bike breaking down. A part of that I forgot to mention was I went in to pick the bike up, but on the way out, I got bug splatter on my windshield. Turns out that because there's no predators here, there's a overpopulation of flying ants. This is their little frame. They only fly for a very tiny while. They're very big, and they're very hard to get off your glass, those guys. And so I was really excited because, but when I got out and cleaned it, here's what I was finding was other flying ants. And when I was putting the bike on the trailer in the city, when I went in to pick it up, there was a lot of flying ants around me at that time. So when they're gone, there'll be no more insect splatters on the windshield here, I can tell you that much. There's a little bit of insects. We're out on an island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we're supposed to be the last place on the planet where bees didn't have parasites. That was the official story a long time ago, right? So then Fukushima happened, and the bees are destroyed because the pollen is radioactive for many, many decades due to the perpetual releases from nuclear power plants worldwide. And let me go back. Topsoil was collected part of large-scale decontamination efforts that also included blasting buildings and roads with high-pressure jets of water. So this is the strangest way you would ever frame that narrative. Using pressure washers to blast buildings and roads is not decontamination. You're just spreading it somewhere else. You can't destroy radioactive fallout on top of that. But using high-pressure jets of water doesn't clean. It cleans dirt. It doesn't clean radiation. It spreads it all over the place again. Makes it worse. And there's so many examples. We got so many pictures over the years, over the last 14 years, of them doing that. And almost all areas of Fukushima have gradually been declared safe. Well, the difference between being declared safe and being safe is important, to say the least. And there is no, you can't make something safe after a nuclear fallout. It once the fallout shows up, and that the confirmation is that is they picked up 30 million one-ton bags, right? So once you go that route, you can't deny that this was a catastrophic event. But guess what? They did. And that's bad for everybody in every species, what's left. So hopefully I'm wrong about the insects, where I'm to. Maybe all summer long my windshield wiper won't be able to get the insects off my windshield. That'll be amazing. But the splashes on my window was probably about 12 or 14. And these are big ants, eh? They're big boys. They just bust wide open. So it's not like it was a perpetual. It was just the ants. It wasn't other insects, right? So once they stopped flying, because that's their mating thing or whatever. I meant to look that up before I went live tonight, and I didn't. It's a very important resource. But the reason they exist in such quantity right now is because there's no predators. There was all kinds of them on the highway. There was no birds that were eating them anywhere. Let's put it that way. During the beginning of the migratory, we're supposed to be 46 million birds here. They're missing. You can find some of them at McDonald's. Not at low tide, though. So you can find saltwater seabirds at McDonald's, not at the low tide line. That's the gallows laugh, by the way. Almost all areas of Fukushima has gradually been declared safe. So that's the number one reason right there to abandon the nuclear industry permanently, because they've done something like that, which is 100% documentation that they're not fit to have on your planet, because they made it, they declared it safe, even though it's impossible to do that. Particularly with picking up 2.5 centimeters of topsoil and pressure washing cars and buildings has never been applied to a nuclear event before. There was no reason, because it's idiotic to suggest that that could mitigate it. You're just spreading it. Like, you can't. Yeah. Hello, everybody. How we doing here? 14 million cubic meters of soil. I want people to become interested and learn about Fukushima, what it's like, really like these days. Well, just because you're stupid enough to believe the propaganda, why should you try to manipulate and deceive other people coming in there? And this is what the media do. They'll put those on a pedestal that are complacent, right? A vast quantity of soil, 14 million cubic meters, which means 16 million cubic meters is missing. Okay, I said that enough times, I better show it to you. But there was 30 million one-ton bags of radioactive fallout. Excuse me. Yeah, I feel quite happy the bike is working. That's a huge deal. Because I depended on that for research, right? I can get down quickly in all the little nooks and crannies along the coastline. All the little communities. Well, our price of gas dropped here. They got rid of the carbon tax for a while. So the price of gas went down like 30 cents a litre. But there was a new prime minister, but now he wants to ban cash. Canada's just a shithole, eh? Brutal. So let me show you that information anyway. Playing Past the Parcel with Fukushima on May 7, 2016. So 2016, there was 30 million tons of radioactive waste will eventually be moved to yet another third-level interim storage facility. And they were talking about bags. The bags deteriorate after 3 years. So the 30 million reference is 30 million one-ton bags. In 2016, there was 150,000 sites. In 2019, there was 105,000 sites. And none of them looked like this. And the reason being is because the bags are round, not square. And so they put that picture there as another form of deception. Just bear with me, I'll show you what I mean. You need pictures of bags sometimes to really appreciate that. So when they talk about when they talk about 105,000 sites, not talking about that green one, they're talking about sites like this. All right. For now, the huge amounts are kept inside of guarded grounds. What do you got to guard one-ton bags that were everywhere? There's 30 million of them just everywhere abandoned. What do you got to guard them for? And protected by layers of clean soil. Where are you going to get clean soil in a nuclear wasteland to cover the enormous amount we're talking about? You're not. And a man-made sheet to prevent rot-off into the environment. Well, the bags deteriorate after 3 years. You got to replace them after 3 years, right? How are you going to replace 30 million? This is just a fraction of a percent of them. Because 1/100 of a percent of the actual inventories. He said, and this was crazy, I never heard this one before, and around 75% of the soil had a radioactivity level equivalent to or less than 1 X-ray. For people who directly stand on or work with the criteria for the bags was 100,000 atoms of cesium-137 per kilogram. And it was, if you look at the numbers, it was easy to get 10 million atoms per kilogram. And they weren't picking up, and they were only looking for cesium, which has a half-life of 30 years, so it's 300-year life. So it'll take another 16 years before it decays its first decay out of 10 decays. So the numbers couldn't change in 14 years. They didn't start picking them up for many years, right? 3 years or something. So it's only been 11, 12 years that they've been picking up bags, and which is 1/3 of a half-life for the cesium-137, which was at 100,000 atoms per kilogram. And then the Geiger counters they were using were very ineffective Geiger counters. And so if you had them at all, they weren't measuring it, they were just picking up topsoil and throwing it in the bags. The propaganda from this industry is the worst, the most dangerous propaganda I've been able to find anywhere about any subject. This industry is completely insane. Asphalt, farm soil, or layers of other materials should be used to seal in the radioactivity. So they're talking about putting the radioactive soil somewhere and putting asphalt over it, farm soil, because then they grow food on top of it, right? Or layers of other material to stop the radioactivity. So they're acknowledging but to suggest that it was equal to an X-ray, and a single X-ray for a pregnant woman, the baby has 50% chance of serious mental health issues when they're born, including Down syndrome and autism. Why this industry doesn't have millions of people gunning for them is a huge issue, because the world at some point is going to just lose their minds when they find out what this industry is really like. China will resume Japanese seafood imported halted over Fukushima water discharge. So this story was about covering up what happened originally. China still bans the food from 14 prefectures 14 years later, but said they're going to ban seafood. But China said that's not true. China did not confirm the agreement on the issue. Not only that, I mean, we done a whole show on that story, because China clearly didn't say they were going to resume seafood. In fact, they didn't confirm any agreement whatsoever. That was a media campaign. I guess they already had the money spent on the public relation firms, and they just came out with that story, which had absolutely no foundation of facts, nothing whatsoever. Power companies and governments describe Fukushima reactors differently. So this was a story that showed up from 2012. And the reason these stories are typically shown up is they change something in the story. So then it gets recirculated back in, right? And so then I find it in the cycle. And so this story came out May 11, 2012. So we don't know what... Typically they retract a lot of lies they would have put in the story, or people that they quoted that are getting government jobs, they'll just take them out of the story. But then it shows back up in the news cycle. And you can find it on the Wayback Machine sometimes. We've done that many times. And found similar stories from the same area that weren't corrected, and showed you that they had removed people from the story, and then these people you find out are working for the regulatory agencies, just coming in or something like that. Japan's electric power, this is really fascinating though. Japan's electric power industry bodies use terms unsupported by the nuclear experts to describe the current state of the reactors at the Fukushima plant in a pamphlet it offers to the public. In a pamphlet it is offering to the public, the Federation of Electric Power Companies of Japan says the 3 reactors, and we know there's 4 because I showed you the documentation already over and over and over, including reactor 4, suffering core meltdowns or under cold shutdown. A term used for normal suspensions of reactors, which does not apply to reactors that melted down. Under cold shutdown. These were, they've lost their entire inventories. The Japanese government and TEPCO operator, Tokyo Electric Power Company, created a new term, a state of cold shutdown. A state of cold shutdown. So instead of saying under cold shutdown, they created this term, a state of cold shutdown, which made allegations that nuclear meltdowns were now in a state of cold shutdown, which meant there was no meltdown, technically, right? The pamphlet titled Consensus 2012, formulated in March, said the plant number 1 reactor was brought to cold shutdown last July or later, number 2 October or later, number 3 last September or later, not December as declared by the government. Well, you got to have a reactor to get any kind of shutdown, let alone a cold shutdown where it's not producing heat. That's reactor 3. The reactor was at the top of the building. There is no top to the building. So how can it be in a cold shutdown? Or in their versions, a state of a cold shutdown. And I showed you the video earlier where they ejected the reactor core right out of the building. It's just a unlikable industry, isn't it? The Federation, comprising Japan's 10 regional power companies, it used the term cold shutdown to have the same meaning as the government's state of cold shutdown. Well, how can you quantify that statement, see? How can you say it has a state of cold shutdown when it has neither? It's a nuclear meltdown, so it can't have that attribute because it didn't go through the process that is associated with that terminology. Does that make any sense? Does reality ever make any sense to the nuclear industry? Can it make any sense to the nuclear industry? Experts have questioned the use of the term cold shutdown, noting that the exact conditions remain unknown in the damaged reactor, which remains unstable and continued leaking. Leaking. Does that look like it's leaking to you? It's just an unlikable industry, no matter how you try to. And because they only hire the worst type of humans, it's impossible to like the industry. They don't have anybody there that's likable on top of that. And I mean, look at the threats they've done to me over the years. It's absurd how many threats. Let me play that Omnis video where they called into the show and told me that the Tokyo government was going to destroy me. I should be very worried, Mr. Dana. I said, are you threatening me? He clearly was threatening me. Oh, no, Mr. Dana. Anyway, I'll be right back. This was, by the way, a couple of years ago. There's many videos like this where I clipped off where they called in and threatened me. Oh, yes. Now, see, because this camera, the aperture is stuck open. I can't do pictures. I can only do videos. And if I accidentally click a picture, I have to take the lens off, restart the camera, click a picture. That'll leave it open. Turn the camera off, then put the lens back on and only use video, right? So when you're zoomed way in over to that island, because that's one of our study groups for field studies, and it's good enough, like, ideally, the theory was I can shoot the video. Oh, I think that's Calm Down Charlie. Should we give it a try? Hello?
Hello, Mr. Dana.
Who's this?
Yoshida Machado, Tokyo Bureau. How are you?
Is this the Tokyo Bureau Chicago division?
Indeed, yes. Mr. Dana,
how do you like my
about a new.
How do you like my T-shirt I got for you? Do you like my? Do you like my T-shirt?
Friend of Tokyo Bureau.
Do you like that?
Tell you about friend of Tokyo Bureau.
You fuck Tokyo Bureau. Fuck you too, you piece of shit.
Radiation
you shut your
nuclear.
pie hole.
He know a lot more than you.
Who do?
You stupid man. He a friend of Tokyo Bureau, and he is instrumental in helping us launch Operation Long Jump.
How do you spell that?
Operation Long Jump.
How do you spell
Mr.
it?
Dana.
How do you spell it? How do you spell it? How do you spell that? Long jab.
Huh?
Long
What
jab?
You say?
You say long jab?
Long Jump.
Long jab.
No. Operation Long Jump. Get it right, Mr. Dana.
Long jab?
Long Jump.
Did you order one of my T-shirts I made for you? You probably got the pink. You probably got the pink one, right?
Stop avoiding the situation.
What do you want, scumbag?
With Tokyo Bureau advisor and friend,
Yeah.
Mr. Thunderfoot, you're gonna be finished. You're gonna be finished, Mr. Dana.
Yeah, I'm all shook up, eh? I'm so scared of you.
You should be. Oh, I would love to be in your shoes. Oh, you make me sick.
Hey, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Okay, sit Sit tight, Mr. Dana.
What are you going to be when you grows up?
Sit tight. We'll be with you soon.
I heard.
See you later, Mr. Dana.
What are you going to be when you grow up? I heard you're going to be a big prick just like me. Which means you haven't got far to go, actually, do you? So there's an interesting threat. They're going to come out and challenge me, are they? That should be fun. Get your Calm Down Charlie t-shirts. We got other colors besides the pink. We got blue and green. And we got other shirts there. So you got a nuclear expert's going to challenge me. That's so much fun. I'm so impressed. Save the whales, ban nuclear power. Save the insects, ban nuclear power. Pro-nuclear is a hate crime. Charlie's a hate crime. That's the famous Calm Down Charlie, folks. You all just got him in real time. So that's an interesting threat. I wonder what do you think a lousy threat? Calm Down Charlie. And so Stinkfoot, that's a famous scumbag on YouTube. Thunderfoot, is it? He's got a video there with over 1 million views about me. And you got all the trolls are underneath. It's hilarious. So I went there, just blocked everybody under the video a long time ago on my other site, just for kicks, because they all show up on my video eventually, right? But what he is, he's a public relations firm, so they're threatening me anyway. And apparently they've been attacking me through Facebook here where I'm to, in the communities, the whole province, right? Just smearing my name. And apparently they're really good at what they do. So they got me pretty well destroyed. And I'm fighting for everybody. And I knew the minute that I went public that this is the type of stuff that would be happening, but I had no idea how vicious these cowards could be. Because it's hard to appreciate a coward in their true form. And when he calls in, like I was cutting him off, I was making fun of him, I was trying to get him off his game. But he's called me thousands of times into the live show since Fukushima. I got lots more videos like that where he calls in. He's very... he's got a website now where he makes videos. Comes in and attacks me. Okay. Looks like I ran out of piss and vinegar here tonight. That's all good. We got a... Oh, calm down, Charlie. He's quite the evil little character, isn't he? He won't show us. He won't send us a picture. He won't tell me where he's to or anything like that. He knows everything about me. We've had him stalking me here many times now, and so they really hate my guts. They don't know what to do with it, right? And so there's a number of times where the same guy shows up. And the last time was on my birthday, where I went out for dinner and this guy shows up. And I didn't realize it at the time, but then I realized he had showed up when I was camping and asked me all the wrong questions. And then he'd done the same thing on my birthday. And I said to myself, if I see him again, he's in for a real friggin' shock. He's in for the biggest shock he's ever going to have in his life. And what an ignorant piece of shit he was. Anyway, let's wrap it up, I guess. James got a new song out. That's pretty cool. Should TEPCO be guilty of something someday? The reason I done that is because they haven't been found guilty of anything important post Fukushima for some reason. Kevin Blanche AI protest dubstep. I'm assuming that's the song. James been cracking the last couple of days. Oh, I thought I was up on the screen there. James has been cracking. James Lucid. 335 songs. And he's got one of the best pictures you can get of me. That's one of the best pictures. I'm doing the 1,000-yard steer. If you zoom in on that picture, that's Dana's 1,000-yard steer equivalent. That was up in that picture was taken in Telegraph Cove on Vancouver Island, and I was on the dock, and we had just got there and went down on the dock, and there was nothing in the water whatsoever. And I dove out there in front of that place many years, for months. When you add it up for many months, right? Just right out in front of it, there's a whole bunch of islands, and we were diving green sea urchins at 90-foot tables. And so you were burning off 8, 9, 10 tanks of air a day. It was kind of fun diving in many ways. And so you're going down with this bag, and you were picking these little small 3-inch green sea urchins. And you just only one size only, so you didn't touch everything else, just that one size. But it was deep diving, and then you're doing the decompression on the way up, and then when you finally get aboard the boat to change tanks, you had your computer there, and you were doing a calculation where you stay up for 15 or 17, 18, 20 minutes, and then you can do 12, 14 minutes back down to 90 feet, and that's what you were doing all day. In the old days, we used to, I shouldn't say this, I suppose. Anyway, fuck it. In the old days, I used to dive Jack Cousteau's, the U.S. Navy dive tables that I got from Jack Cousteau. I grew up with Jack Cousteau encyclopedias, and there would be one, wherever I was to, I had at least one of those encyclopedias for years and years and years and years. I was a voracious reader. I read really interesting books. I was one of those lucky people who grew up with access to really interesting books, historically accurate books and stuff like that. The Jacques Cousteau document encyclopedia was my favorite. It's pretty hard to spot me in the house without a book in my hand, on my lap, under my arm, or just hanging off the chair between a couple of fingers with my thumb in a. I just loved the ocean life, right? And so it was no big surprise I grew up to be a commercial diver. And in my spare time, I had 14,000 hours on the ocean floor, but in my spare time I was out diving wrecks all the time, looking for Davy Jones' locker. And one of the books I had read like 6 times was a book on Martin Bormann, who was the financial officer for the Nazis, apparently. And he escaped allegedly to Paraguay. There was a book written by a special prosecutor who chased after Martin Bormann around the world for 27 or 27 years. All he'd done was travel around the world. So he documented, the book was documentation of taxis and airplanes and ships and his travel, right? His hotels, his meals that he ate, and anybody he talked to. And so Martin Bormann had escaped, allegedly, at the end of the war over in Europe there, with 9 submarines full of gold and paintings and loot, right? And so I was hoping to find one of those. There was, because as a young kid, you can imagine how that. But I had read that book 6 times. It's probably the most boringest book you'll ever read, by the way. But I was fascinated by patterns, and so that book really appealed to me. Like growing up, I wouldn't read. I have, but I typically wouldn't read like Reader's Digest or National Geographic, stuff like, a little bit, right? But my passion was under the ocean. And so very fortunate to grow up in that environment. Oh yeah, that's how we got there. I was talking about that picture. It's always been one of my favorite pictures too, because that's a real picture of. If you really want to appreciate me, what I'm like in real life, that's a good picture. When you zoom in on it, that's Dana. That's my open conversation face too, right? I'm paying it when you see that I'm paying attention, right? Kevin Blanche, I guess that's AI protest dubstep. Okay, AI, yeah. And so James got out, this is quite the trip here, the electric climate acid test. That was awesome, man. That was wild. I think that was the commenter lifter. Man, that is amazing stuff. So I really, really like that James has so many interests, right? Because you really got to have a pretty cool imagination to come up with this stuff. Right? It's like holy shit stuff. That was about the farmer there. No Escape, man. Just so many just bang on songs. These are all No Bugs on it. Amazing songs. Ocean Smell Is Gone. These are amazing songs. So many different genres. I can't say enough good things about it. I got high hopes for that music to change the world. I really do, because music is the perfect weapon, right? So Kevin Blanche, AI dubstep. I'm just wasting time again. Just come out in a minute, Dana. You're wasting time. So I got an hour 56. We almost got a 2-hour show punched in, which is like gold. My apologies, I'm plugged up. All right, let's get ready. I'm going to adjust the volume on my end. And just remember that that's what happens. So when you listen, if you listen to his song, I'm going to put the link there, by the way. Let me put the link. Let me turn that song down. I'll put the link to the song there so you can go listen to it that way too. I'm going to try to remember to keep doing that. I'll put that in the comment section. Put that in the comment section for everybody. Yep. You're welcome. Good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Let's enjoy. With James, you got to remember, he does all the graphics, the artwork, and the music through AI, which is unbelievably harder than you might. And then high quality. It's extraordinary. It's never been done in history in this application on top of that. And so he's got himself a spot in history. Here we go. I'm adjusting the volume on my end. His volume is always awesome. And so if you hear the volume jumping, it's because I got headphones on. And my system's a little on, I worry about my system sometimes giving the wrong audio. Take care. Hugs for everybody. See everybody tomorrow night. If all goes well. Take care now.
I think about all of us grassroots fighters. We fucking built the Million Mask March. 7 million people. 7 million. They're afraid of us. Always were. So many of those fighters are fucking dead now. You know, I'm the guy who started it. Change policing in this country, that's unarguable. All my accomplishments, every fucking one. The act of Kevin Blanche. But nothing's more paramount than knocking over that first domino at San Onofre, kicking down the fucking nuclear energy crime syndicate. That was the line in the fucking sand. We tipped them all over. Pilgrim, Yankee, 3 Mile, Oyster Creek, Sadie's, Indian Point. We fucking did it. Let's finish the fucking job. All those grassroots warriors fighting with me. This is the historical record. I was born for this spike. We have to finish it. Get the fucking waste off my place. Still reporting. They play the expert. I am the expert. We shut it all down. San and over. That was me. G exchange leaks. That's my fucking work. Kathy Berry taking. Lonnie fought till the end. My father, on his deathbed, I swore I'd finish this fucking job. I'd expose every leak. I struck the center. Bob Hoffman knows. I feel it in my fucking skull. I see them. I don't give a fuck. I confronted the NRC. Go ask them. Idaho National Lab, Livermore, Oak Ridge, IAEA, boots on the fucking ground in DC. I was there. Every fucking week, a casket of nuclear waste rides past my house from San Onofre to Utah. Every fucking week, 3, 4, 5 years straight. You say we can't move it? We do move it. Well, the caskets, pull them off the pad, put them on the train, take them to WIP, be fucking done. It's like cancer. I told my doctor, I'm not dying with the company. Mission Bay Baseball High Heat, Pacific Beach, Del Mar Fast Times. We're down to our last pitch. We need a hit. Been in a slump years now, but we're not done and finish the fucking job.
I loved it. It was crazy. Oh yeah, another favorite song. There you go. That was brilliant, man. Wow. Give that a thumbs up. I get the link in the description. It'll show up 12 hours later. YouTube's been fucking me over. Have a great night. Great day tomorrow. Hugs for everybody. See you on the next one. Take care now.